The sergeant shoved her into the electric fence during night drills. She never made a sound. Rain fell sideways under floodlights, and mud sucked at 18 pairs of boots, standing in formation. Private Maya Torres felt her heart slam against her ribs as Sergeant Dale Harmon's face came within inches of hers, spit flying with every word. She didn't know that in the next 10 seconds, her body would be thrown against a fence wired with enough current to make her teeth ache. She didn't scream. She didn't fall. And that silence would change everything. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. Maya had joined the army for one reason: to prove to herself, more than anyone else, that she wasn't the girl who quit things. She'd quit piano at 12, college volleyball at 19, a relationship that scared her more than it should have. Boot camp was supposed to be the one thing she finished. She'd told her mother that on the phone, voice steady, hands shaking. Now, soaked to the bone on a training field 2 hours before midnight, she wondered if finishing meant surviving men like Sergeant Harmon. Harmon had a reputation. The kind whispered between bunks after lights out. The kind recruits traded like currency. Watch yourself with him. Watch yourself at night drills. He believed pain built soldiers. He believed humiliation built obedience. What nobody said out loud was that he believed it a little too much, and that somewhere along the way, discipline had curdled into something else entirely. That night, the platoon ran the perimeter course in the rain. Obstacle after obstacle, mud swallowing their boots, lungs burning. Maya was fast, faster than most of the men, and she knew Harmon hated that. When she reached the final checkpoint, half a step ahead of a recruit named Ostrowski, Harmon's face changed. Something flickered behind his eyes, something ugly and old, the kind of resentment that has nothing to do with rules and everything to do with pride. He grabbed her by the collar. The other recruits froze. Somewhere in the dark, a boot shifted in the mud, the only sound besides the rain. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved to help, because in that world, moving meant losing everything you'd worked for. Fear does that. It turns good people into statues. She thought he was only going to yell at her. She was wrong. He shoved her, hard, and her shoulder hit the fence, the one lined with warning signs, the one humming faintly under the storm. Electricity kissed her skin in a blue-white flash, current tracing down her spine like a hand made of lightning. Pain seared through her, sharp and total, and for one suspended second the whole world went white at the edges. She didn't scream. Her jaw locked. Her fists curled. Somewhere deep inside her, something that had been quietly forming for years, since piano, since volleyball, since every time she'd almost given up, rose up and held the line. She stood there, smoke curling faintly off wet fabric, and looked Harmon dead in the eye. Silent. Unbroken. The silence unsettled him more than screaming ever could have. Word moves fast in a company of recruits, faster than any official report. By breakfast, half the barracks had heard some version of it. Some said she'd nearly been electrocuted. Some said Harmon had lost his mind entirely. What was true was worse than any rumor. Maya's shoulder blistered beneath her uniform, and 3 recruits, including Ostrowski, had seen everything. Here is where the story gets complicated, and where you have to ask yourself what you would have done. Ostrowski was 2 weeks from a promotion recommendation Harmon controlled. Reporting what he saw could end that. Staying silent meant living with it. He chose to write it down anyway, hands trembling. In a statement he slid under the company commander's door before dawn, not because it was safe, but because some things matter more than safety. Captain Elena Reyes read that statement twice before she stood up from her desk. The investigation moved with a speed rare in military bureaucracy because Reyes made it move. She pulled security footage from the perimeter cameras, grainy, rain-streaked, but unmistakable. She interviewed Maya alone, gently, in a room with no cameras and a cup of coffee that went cold, untouched. Maya spoke quietly, steadily, the same way she'd stood at the fence. She wasn't seeking sympathy. She was stating facts. 3 days later, the entire company stood in formation on that same training field, sun out this time, the fence behind them silent and disconnected. Sergeant Harmon was escorted off the base in front of every recruit he had once controlled with fear. Nobody cheered. Nobody needed to. The stillness itself was the verdict, an entire platoon finally exhaling at once, the kind of collective breath that says we saw, and now it's over. Maya finished boot camp 3 weeks later. Her shoulder healed into a thin, pale scar she rarely spoke about, though sometimes recruits who'd heard the story would glance at it before quickly looking away, as if it were something sacred rather than something ugly. She never framed herself as a hero. She simply said she stood there because sitting down felt like losing, and she had already decided, long before that fence, that she was done losing. Because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back, sometimes in the shape of a private who won't look away, or a captain who won't sign off on silence. The rain that night fell the same as it always does, indifferent, ordinary, but for one recruit standing against a fence, it became the moment she finally stopped running from herself. If this story moved you, tell us where you're watching from, and stay a while longer, because every week, we bring you true stories of courage forged in the hardest places. Subscribe so you never miss the next one.